You can just get kicked out of your league? Oh my gosh, like, what is that? Can't believe that we don't have something like that in some of our sports. Like,
It makes sense.
we are actually live right now on Twitch, and we've got a whole group of people here watching the Euros matches with us and streaming live on Twitch. Thanks to the UEFA copyright lords, they have basically destroyed my income on this channel, and so I'm having to stream on Twitch. I can't stream on YouTube until September. So if you ever want to catch some of my live streams, we have a lot of fun here with the chat, hanging out, having a good time. You can go join us on Twitch. That link will be in the description of the video, unless I'm lazy in the future. But in today's video, I have my buddy Dylan back with me. He's fresh to the sport, fresh to the beautiful game, and in today's video, we're going to watch an explainer. This is European Soccer Explained for Americans, and we are both Americans.
4 simple steps. Okay.
In 4 simple steps.
Welcome to Understanding Soccer in Europe in 4 Simple Steps, a guide for Americans. Although from the outside it may seem complex and confusing, to understand how soccer works in Europe, you really only need to know 4 things. Number 1, each country has its own soccer league. Seasons run from August to May, in which each team plays every other team twice, once at home and once on the road. Games are divided into 2 45-minute halves, and when the game is over, the winner is awarded 3 points, the loser 0, and in the event of a tie, each team gets 1 point. After each team has played all the other teams twice, the team with the most points is crowned champion of the league. They get a big trophy, a parade, and the season is over. There are no playoffs.
All right, so you understood all of that already, right? About the table?
Of course.
Or do I?
Yeah.
Right, okay. So I was streaming with my wife a while back, and I tried to explain the table to her, and it was not mathing for her. She was like, how could you win by 2 points and you got 3 points? I was like trying to explain how the point system works. But yeah, okay. So you're caught up to date on the tables and how those work. All right,
yeah. I know the table. I know the whole concept of that. Yeah.
All right, sweet.
Sort of, but more on that in a minute. Before the books are closed on the season, there is still one small bit of housekeeping to be done. Number 2, relegation. We'll use the German League as an example.
Yep.
Every year, when the German League has concluded and the champion has been crowned, the 3 teams with the least amount of points are kicked out of the league. This process is known as relegation. The 3 vacant spots are subsequently filled by the top 3 teams from Germany's 2nd division. And unlike, say, baseball in the US, teams in the 2nd and subsequent divisions are not owned by teams in the top division. Imagine
Right. Okay, that's a big point. So these are like not... It's not like a minor league team that's like a farmer's team for a bigger team. Like the 2nd division, it's not minor leagues. It's its own division with its own clubs, like their own entities. Yeah, I think we even discussed that in our last time we talked. But
Yeah.
Imagine if the Pittsburgh Pirates or Oakland Raiders had to fight at the end of each season just to stay in the league. What if instead of coasting to the bottom for better draft picks, they were fighting to the bitter end to avoid the $40 million revenue loss that relegated teams suffer in the first year alone?
yeah,
That's brutal.
So
brutal.
when you get relegated, in fact, so my chat's going to be able to join in here. Somebody tell me that sometimes when you get relegated, the financial hit is so bad that teams have gone solvent. Is it solvent or insolvent? What's the word? What am I looking for? Teams have actually gone bankrupt shortly after being relegated. So it could literally mean, it could spell the end of your club to continuously be relegated. And so when people... Yeah, something like 10 teams in like 5 years have gone bankrupt. That's what JoJo's saying here. So like it's when teams are like, they're fighting not only to stay up, like they're fighting not to lose, potentially to, like, it could be catastrophic for your team to be relegated. And and so some teams weather it a lot better than others, but like some teams get relegated and they get stuck in these non-league positions for decades and fighting to get out of it. And then because the financial loss is so intense, they're not even able to recoup the cost half the time. And think about this. How are you going to promote if you don't have good players? Okay, well, how are
Exactly.
you going to get good players if you don't have money? So, like, it's one of those situations where it's such an American system, to be honest. If you're good, you get rewarded. You get financial incentives. You get given. If you're bad, you get money taken from you. Like, for us, if we're bad, you get given the best draft pick. if you're
Yeah,
if
yeah.
you're good, you get the worst draft pick. So it's like it brings we're trying to balance it out and trying to bring parity into the league, but anyway, this is in danger of being an hour-long video, and it's
That's
only a 4-minute video we're watching. So let's get back into it.
Not to mention the
that's
fact
thing
that in
here.
England, 9 different teams have gone financially insolvent within 5 years of relegation.
There it
Wow.
is.
Okay, interesting enough, you're thinking. But what about that whole lack of playoffs part? Number 3. Each country also holds an elimination-style tournament, referred to as a cup. But instead
Okay.
of being held after the 9-month league is over, cup games are scheduled in between league games,
Right.
normally in the middle of the week. One additional perk about the cup system is that teams from all levels, down to semi-professional and even some amateur teams, are invited to play. And if they do,
Now, did you know about that? The fact that the cup is played throughout the season? Are you familiar
I
with that?
actually, I know. Well, yeah, because it's the same thing for the Champions League Cup too. But
Right, yeah, so go ahead.
that does get confusing though.
Yeah, so like you'll have
Yeah.
some teams are playing like the FA, you have the FA Cup, you have the Europa League, you have the Champions League. All of these tournaments are happening at the same time that the season is being played out. So like for instance, you have your Premier League matches, but then some teams will play on another day in the middle of the week, and it might be in a tournament. Like your tournament starts early in the season, but it finishes towards the end. So it's like the tournaments are played
Okay.
out along the same timeline as your regular season games. So it would be like this is not a good comparison, but it would be like the Super Bowl being played or the playoffs being played at the same time that your regular season games are being played. So
But if they're in multiple cups at the same time, how does that work? Like if they're in
because
the Champions League and
Mhm.
whatever the other
yeah,
ones are.
games will get scheduled around it. So like a lot of times, um, someone says, "Yeah, here this will help." League matches are normally on the weekends. The cup games usually happens during the week, and there are
Okay.
times, like
Okay.
for instance, there are times when league matches get postponed because that team is playing a final in they're preparing for a final in one of their cups. So leagues kind of work, they work around it. They'll reschedule games, well,
Okay.
sometimes, but that's not, for the most part, it goes off without any problems because the cup games don't happen every week like the league games do. So every week you have a league game that you're playing, and then occasionally you're throwing games into your schedule that are happening on midweek days, and you're playing alongside a tournament. So, and you're
Okay.
often
Okay.
playing multiple tournaments. Like, so for instance, there's this thing called winning the treble, and that happened. Manchester United did it in 1992 or 1999. One of those years in the 90s, they won the treble. Manchester City just won the treble. They won the FA Cup final, they won the Champions League final, and they won the Premier League. So like they won all three tournaments in the
Wow.
year. It's three major trophies. It's called winning the treble. When you win your domestic cup, another European tournament, and Champions League. But yeah, it says they did it in 1999. Sometimes a cup run can save a whole team, legit pay for a decade of wages. Yeah, winning a cup is
Wow.
huge. It's huge if you're able to win a cup because you win the financial incentives. And like he said, like the FA Cup, you have teams from like the fourth division sometimes playing against Premier League teams. Like for instance, and sometimes you have
Okay.
upsets. Somebody tell me about one of the upsets that happened recently. I don't remember them off the top of my head, but like I remember last year watching some of the FA Cup games, and you've got a Premier League team. Sometimes they'll send their like B team to play against a team that's like in the fourth division because
Okay. Okay.
because they're not expecting that team to put up a fight. And sometimes they do, and sometimes those like smaller teams will upset a bigger team. Coventry, yeah. So Coventry got to the semifinals of, and I think they were or they a second or third tier team. But anyway, smaller clubs get money for TV as well if they draw a big team. So like, yeah, you'll get some money from the TV rights if you're playing against one of these top tier clubs. So it's being in second tier for Covington, but it was still an upset. So, but yeah. So anyway, so the cups are huge. Like especially if you're a smaller club, you need to take it really seriously. All right, let's get back to
bringing the big bucks.
Yeah, because you can bring in the money. Let's get back here.
What? They do well, can progress, and occasionally even knock off a top team. So every year, these midweek elimination games continue until there are only 2 teams left who play each other in the cup final. After 90 minutes, a cup champion is crowned, they get a trophy, and a parade. So, between the league and cup games, we get a great picture of who the best and worst teams in each country are. But wait a second, you ask. What would happen if the best teams from each country in Europe all got together and played each other? Good idea. Number 4. The resulting competition is called the UEFA Champions League, and it is without a doubt the single greatest club competition of any sport anywhere in the world, period. Think of the NCAA tournament, but with better quality of play, more than double the fan base, and quadruple the enthusiasm. And yes, Europe even has their own version of the NIT as well. So, through a complex and drawn-out process, teams from all over Europe compete just to qualify for this tournament. And starting each September, the top 32 teams are put into 8 groups of 4. Each team plays the other members of its group 2 times, once at home and once on the road. Come December, the winner and runner-up from each group move on to the knockout round. And this is where club soccer is at its finest. Teams are paired up individually and again play 1 home and 1 away game, with the winner from each pair moving on to the next round until only 2 teams remain. The Champions League...
Right, and so remember that you were actually in the chat with us when we were reacting to this. Dortmund played against Real Madrid for this Champions League. Yeah, so you were there, you saw that happen. But qualifying for and someone's saying I was waiting for that comment. It's not like this now. The UCL format has actually changed. So this video is a little outdated because, and I'm not even sure I understand completely because there's 36 teams in the Champions League now. So, for instance, I'll explain. The way that it happens is like the top 4 teams in the Premier League will get a spot in the Champions League. But, so like if we had finished 4th, which I wanted to so bad, we would be in the Champions League. But also, there was a coefficient number that was really a complex equation that nobody understands. But basically, the way that each country kind of performs determines whether or not that country gets a 5th spot. So, like for instance, I had to be rooting for English teams to win in those major tournaments. Because if English teams won, it increased the odds of the 5th place in the Premier League actually getting a Champions League spot as well.
Wow.
And they let me down in a big way. The English teams all went out really quick. So, and there's also, like, if you win the Europa League, you also get an automatic spot. So, like, they had to figure out a way to fit 4 extra teams in. So it's like a bloodbath for who gets to qualify for those 4 extra Champions League spots. So anyway.
So Champions League is Spain, England, France, Germany.
It's the major European... All the major European leagues get an opportunity to put someone in. Yep.
Okay.
Someone said it's a mess now. There's more than that, yeah. Greek, yeah.
I mean, the Greece. 4 spots, if you're going to have to battle it out for that, that's insane.
Right. Yeah,
when did they add that? When did they add that?
This year. This is the first year. This should be the first year that they're doing it. And it's all of Europe, by the way. The Champions League, all of Europe, their top leagues get in there. Even Aston Villa qualified. Aston Villa played well. They earned that spot. Now, for instance, Belgium only get 1 spot. Any country can have a team in the UCL. Yeah, but it's kind of confusing how they choose the teams, in my opinion. All right, let's get back to the video. This is already, I told you, it's going to be an hour-long reaction.
Hey.
We're getting there. We've got like 40 seconds left. All right.
Champions League final is then held as a single game each year in May. And unless it's the World Cup year, this is the most important soccer game of the year. After 90 minutes, a champion is crowned, the trophy is awarded, parades commence, and all clubs go on break until the madness fires back up again in August. So, to review, number 1, each country has its own league. Number 2, the worst teams are kicked out of the league and replaced by the best teams from the next division down. Number 3, throughout the year, each country also holds a playoff-type tournament called a cup. And number 4, the UEFA Champions League is a tournament involving all of Europe and is the most important competition in all of club soccer.
Yep. All right.
Okay, that makes sense.
So I reacted to that. I reacted to that like this is my second video I reacted to back in October. It's kind of cringy. Honestly, I'm going to do like I said, I'm going to do a live stream where I react to all of my old reactions, and I see how cringy it is. But it was my second stop on the journey, and I was shocked. I was floored by relegation. Like, I was like, you can just get kicked out of your league? Oh my gosh! Like, what is that? And now I'm kind of like, it's just like, I can't believe that we don't have something like that in some of our sports. Like,
it makes sense.
It makes so much sense.
Really
if you perform well, you get rewarded. If you don't, you don't just get to be mediocre. Like, you don't just get to be the Browns every year.
Exactly.
Like, so,
accurate.